Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about positivity or what it means. And we're going to talk more about what is toxic positivity. So first, I want to be able to say that, yes, being able to have an optimistic view of life, being able to think positively about your situation is helpful. It is a way to actually be able to cope with and manage with the stresses of your life. However, it becomes toxic and harmful when we're only willing to focus on the positive emotions, positive situations, positive aspects of an experience or a situation, while also rejecting or ignoring any negative emotions or negative expectations or negative experiences that we have about a process or about a situation. Now, there are times that we do this to ourselves. There are times that we do this to other people. But this is something that we have to be mindful of, is when we're being toxically positive. And it's not helpful. It is actually harmful. And there are several reasons why being toxically positive can be harmful. One of those reasons is that when we are focusing primarily on the positives, we start to become dismissive or we diminish any negative emotions or any negative experiences. And we start to make people feel like, and ourselves feel, some level of guilt about having negative emotions or having negative experiences by diminishing or dismissing any negative emotion or negative experience you have. Another reason toxic positivity can be unhelpful or harmful is that it does not allow you to focus on or actually take into consideration the reality of your situations. And most situations are not all positive and most situations are not all negative. But when we focus primarily on the positives, we don't focus on those negative experiences or those negative aspects of a situation or an experience, which are things that we could possibly change, which are things that we can identify and do something about if we're willing to actually focus on them. But when we are being toxically positive, we don't focus on them and it doesn't really change the situation. And lastly, how it can be unhelpful or harmful is that it requires the suppression of any negative emotions, which can cause you to lose some valuable information. Your negative emotions are just as informative as your positive emotions. So when I say negative emotions, I'm meaning anger, frustration, irritation, worry, or sadness. So when I'm talking about positive emotions, I'm talking about happiness, excitement, joyful, content. All of those are what we consider positive emotions. And we can get information from both negative and positive emotions because it lets us know what's happening in our environment. So if we only focus on the positive emotions, we miss some valuable information by dismissing or ignoring any negative emotions that we may be experiencing. So let's say, for instance, you're working in a job where you have a boss who is harmful, who is toxic, who says negative things to you all the time, who is very critical of your work, who doesn't take into consideration things that you have going on maybe outside of work, who says negative things about coworkers, who says negative things about other employees, who is just all around not really a great person. So when anything happens that's directed towards you, you suppress it. You say things to yourself like, it'll get better. Look on the bright side. I have a job. Other people have it worse than me. At least I'm getting paid every week or every 2 weeks. Although your pay may not be worth what you're going through, sometimes all of these negative experiences that you're going through. However, these negative emotions and these negative feelings that you're experiencing every time there is negativity coming towards you does not go away when you put the blanket of positivity over it. Those emotions are still happening. Those internal reactions are still happening. You're just suppressing them or ignoring them. So what will eventually happen is someone, maybe a coworker, maybe someone at home, says something that feels like a trigger for you. And all of a sudden you snap. You start to release all of this pent up energy, all of this pent up anger, all of this pent up negative experiences that you suppressed, and you start to project it or you start to direct it at these individuals who may or may not be deserving of this negativity. So it's not that it goes anywhere. It just starts to come out in different areas of our lives that can cause more harm because we're not willing to take into consideration what's happening. So what should you do instead? What you should do instead is when you're feeling a negative emotion, anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, lean into that emotion. Start to ask yourself, what's happening in my environment that's causing me to feel this way? And honestly, it could be nothing happening in your environment. You may simply feel that way. And what you should do in those moments is just allow yourself to feel that emotion, to see what it feels like, and eventually that emotion will dissipate. But we can't try to suppress it or ignore it. Just allow yourself to feel it. If there's not anything in the environment that's causing that emotion for you, just simply allow yourself to feel it. But I want to add a caveat to that. Don't allow yourself to continue to sit in negative emotions so long that you become overwhelmed by that emotion, so you start to get stuck and immobilized by that emotion. Sit in that emotion long enough so that you're able to process or actually think about and deal with what's happening for you in that moment. And sometimes reaching out for support is helpful. Sometimes when I'm feeling that way, when I'm feeling like this, what I call an icky feeling, can't really put my finger on what it is. Sometimes it feels like frustration. Sometimes it feels like, just feels off. When I'm feeling that way, what I'll do is I'll reach out to a coworker, I'll reach out to a friend, and I'll reach out to my sister. And 9 times out of 10, they feel that same way. However, if they don't feel that way, sometimes they'll talk me through that experience. Sometimes they'll talk about something other than what I'm thinking about or what I'm doing in that moment to distract me away from that emotion that I'm feeling. And that may be another way to handle those uncomfortable emotions or those emotions that really doesn't have a cause. It may be helpful to do something to distract yourself when you find that you're getting overwhelmed, when you've allowed yourself to sit in this emotion long enough that you know that you're starting to feel overwhelmed, you're starting to feel stuck. Be willing to give yourself a mental break and give yourself a mental reset. It may cause that emotion to dissipate, or it may help you start to identify the purpose or the reasoning behind that emotional experience you're having. And another thing you can do instead is when you're feeling negative emotions or when something negative happens in your environment, be aware of it. Identify what's that negative experience. What's those things that are happening around you that's causing you to feel that way. Give voice to it. And when you're able to give voice to it and when you're able to give identification to it, then you're able to implement some change. Or you're able to identify that this is something that is outside of my control. So maybe you may need to change the situation you're in. Maybe you need to change an action that you're engaging in. And maybe, just maybe, it might be something that you have to learn how to adjust and deal with because it is outside of your control and it's just something that may happen. The one example that comes to mind is like having a coworker that has a body odor. That can be frustrating. That can be uncomfortable in a work situation. Let's say you work in cubicles and you're working right beside this person. You can't make this person get a bath. You can't make this person find a better perfume or a cologne. So you have to adjust to what's happening in the environment, and you don't just simply allow yourself to sit in it and build up these negative emotions until they start to explode or start to come out and interfere with other areas of your life. And last thing I want us to consider is that please give other people grace who say these positive statements to you, such as, it'll get better, things are going to be okay, look at the bright side. Give them grace because not everyone is a philosopher, not everyone is a therapist, so they may not have the ability or the understanding to be able to tune into your emotional experience in that moment. So just give them that grace and understand that this may not be the person you reach out to when you're feeling this way, because that need to dismiss how I'm feeling or to gloss over it with positivity is not helpful. But give them grace because they're not therapists. They are doing the exact same thing that you're doing. They are trying to figure out how to survive and find their sliver of happiness on this rotating rock. And this could also be a teachable moment. If this is someone that's a family member or a friend that you care about, that you turn to often, this may be a teachable moment because our friends and our family members don't always know what we need or what we're going through. So it's sometimes helpful to teach people what you need in those moments. And I can think of one situation where I was kind of having a bad day. I don't know what was going on and I can't remember the situation, but I reached out to one of my guy friends just to talk about it because he sometimes brings the logic in and helps me out to kind of tame my emotions in those situations. So when I was talking to him, what whatever he was saying, whatever he was talking about was not very helpful. And that's what I told him. I was like, I appreciate you trying to help me out, but everything you said was not helpful at all. But I do thank you for trying. And in that moment, I may have given him some information about what I was really looking for in that moment, or I didn't know what I was really looking for in that moment. And you have to be mindful, if you're not able to identify what you're needing in this moment, how is someone else going to be able to identify what you need in that moment? So sometimes you have to teach your friends and your family members what you're needing in specific moments. And sometimes you have to understand that this may not be the individual I can turn to when I need someone to kind of help me process or lean into these negative emotions. Now, what I hope you take from today's video is this: not all positivity is toxic positivity. You can be optimistic. You can look for the bright side of certain situations. You can try to find the positivity in a situation. However, it becomes toxic and it becomes unhelpful and harmful when we start to only focus on the positivity while repressing or ignoring any negative emotion or any negative experience we're having. So know the difference between having a positive outlook on a certain situation and being toxically positive and ignoring the negatives. As always, I want you to take the time to jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I hope you've learned something from today's video. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be speaking with you again very soon. Thank you.